Self-supporting, declining outside contributions. We will now pass the basket. This is a weekly step meeting. Our format is as follows. The speaker is asked to talk for 25 to 30 minutes on the step of that week, followed by discussion or questions until 7 p.m. You can find these weekly meetings on our YouTube page, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe, and share. This brings us to the speaker portion of the meeting on July 1st, 2024 in Doylestown, PA at the Monday night 6 p.m. Stay Alive Literature and Step Group at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. Tonight's speaker is Will. So let's please give Will a warm welcome.
I'm Will, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Will.
I don't think I got told what the step of the week was, though.
Do we know? Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry about
So
it.
I will preface that I'm pretty new in this, so if it's a story of what it was like, what happened, what it's like after, there's not a lot of what it's like after. But I've been banging my head against this recovery thing now for 4 years, and a lot of it's been failure, but I've still learned a lot of hard lessons. So I'll just start simple. I was born in 2002 in West Virginia. My dad was deployed in Iraq after 9/11. He got shipped right after him and my mom made me. And so yeah, I just grew up with my mom, small town West Virginia, right in the Panhandle, maybe a 40-minute drive from Maryland. I don't remember a single memory of my life, quite frankly, probably up until I was 7. All I know, it was pretty peaceful, country life. I had a little sister who was born when I was 5 years old. Her name's Audrey. She's still a minor, and I love that I get sober while she's still a kid, and I sort of get to give her that role of, I've sort of seen the wrong side of the tracks, and I'm going to try and help you in whatever way I can to not end up where I have been. So yeah, when I was 7, my mom had discovered a history of infidelity with my dad. I don't expressly know the circumstances, but all I know is my dad had been cheating on my mom either from the time he was deployed or a little bit after when he came home. So my dad left my life when I was 7 years old, at least in the role of a father living in the home. We also just moved houses. All of West Virginia is rural. There ain't really a city portion of it, but there's definitely more urbanized areas, and we went to a quite rural area. Our road wasn't even paved where I grew up, and it was nice country living. I lived there up until about the point I was 12, and this is probably the period of my life where a little bit of unmanageability started creeping in. I never consumed any sort of substance during the time I lived at this house, but I started having ideas. I don't know necessarily what they appeared in my head out of, and I don't know everyone's feelings on this particular subject matter, but around the time I was 8 years old, I kept getting these odd thoughts, and I would walk to my mom's closet and I would put on her clothing, and I'd try to wear makeup and stuff like that. And I had this big dilemma where I think I felt more comfortable living as a woman than I did a man. Now obviously I don't present that way, and you'll hear why I don't, but it started to throw I lived in the deep south, basically. I mean, like I said, our road wasn't even paved, so these were feelings that were not allowed, basically. My family loved me, but the world outside my house probably wouldn't have. And it started to throw in some internal discourse. That's probably the best I could say it. I had a bunch of good friends at school with me, but all the same, I was pretty isolated every hour I wasn't in school. When I was growing up during this period of my life too, I've never been bad at school, but I've had bad behaviors for a long time, and when it came to schoolwork, it doesn't matter if I was qualified to do it or not. For some reason, I would just shove it off, and I would live this really secretive lifestyle, even from being a kid. You know, me personally, I feel like I was an alcoholic since the day I was born. You know, the moment I learned to scheme, I think I started to do it. And I've lived off self for a long time. So, you know, I would start these scheming behaviors. My mom had a full pantry of food, and I would always steal the food and go hide it up in my room and like sort of live in this pigsty of my own creation. And my mom would never be mad at me for eating, but for some reason I still kept this behavior like hidden and secretive, and it would play into it with schoolwork too, or I would just have behaviors that weren't, you know, they weren't uncommon for a child, but they were not things a kid should be doing either. And it's like I lived in the shadows, especially like I was even talking about it just a second ago with when I would be going into my mother's closet and stuff like that. Like it was like I was building up this secret private world for myself. And all I was really worried about was myself, you know, in a way that wasn't healthy for anyone, including myself. But, you know, skipping forward a little bit, right around the time I was 10, my mom met a really nice man named Robert. He went by Woody, and they started going on dates, things of that nature. Woody very quickly became my stepdad. He proposed to my mother when I was in 6th grade. And, you know, Woody, he's the person I think of as my real father. My dad, after the divorce, he wasn't necessarily in any way removed from the family, but I will say he's never acted like a father. You know, he was the disciplinarian with no love behind it. The man just loved to beat me. And I don't really need to even go into it, but I was just talking about these negative behaviors. My mother would try to address the issue. My dad would beat the issue out of me, and it just kept making these things worse, you know. And I really don't resent the man for it. I think he's just sick, and I think he's an alcoholic all the same. And I don't think he is open to this message at this point. But all the same, my stepdad showed up in my life, and my stepdad was probably one of those stoners from the 60s who was really into like Bob Dylan, or, you know, he was a real laid-back character, and honestly, he's probably exactly the type of man I needed to enter my life after my dad, and he's never left my side, not one time, since I've met him. You know, I'm extremely appreciative to my stepdad. So yeah, right upon the turning point of me going into 7th grade, I left West Virginia. My mom and my stepdad got married, and I moved to a town called Frederick in Maryland. It's not a terrifically big town. It's not a terrifically small town. It's just sort of there. You know, Maryland's the point where I sort of opened up, and a lot of that internal confusion I couldn't really be comfortable with in West Virginia sort of sprang out. I was excessively popular in 7th grade, and I think the thing that sort of first showed me how fun escaping myself could be was dating. All of a sudden I was the new kid in school, and it was like those stupid middle school relationships. And I think I probably dated 15 girls in 7th grade. Just the most pointless behaviors I could. But those behaviors of like the secretive lifestyle and shoving off any real sense of responsibility that I had to deal with, that got way worse too, with me wanting to escape myself in these like pleasure-seeking behaviors. My grades slipped. I wasn't a good person to be around my family. And, you know, I just had this storm brewing of pure confusion. And those internal dilemma thoughts sort of came to a head when I was 13. At 13, and I still consider it to be my worst year of my life after everything else that's happened to me. 13, I decided to live a year of my life as a woman. I don't need to give you the full scope of it. All I can tell you is I was physically beaten every day from people that barely knew me. I was probably the least popular kid in school. It was incredibly awkward. You know, it's honestly sort of a traumatic period in my life because it went beyond your average bullying. You know, it just made me feel like a lesser degree of a human being. And I could ramble on about that all day, but anyway, we're at an AA meeting, so I'll sort of get to the point where I incorporate some AA things. Basically, going into high school, I'll just say I had just come out of the worst year of my life that I could have known. So I walked into freshman year, and I had been dating this man for basically the whole half of my freshman year. And right when we had broken up, I remember it clear as day. He invited me to his house the day after Christmas. I don't know who wants to hang out with their ex, but I guess we both did. And he wanted me to indulge in some smokable alcohol. I can't, it's AA, but you know what I'm talking about. I was scared to death. I had gone over there to smoke Marlboros because I wanted to feel rebellious. And, that's the day that genie sort of got let out the bottle. I remember instantly falling in love with the feeling of escaping from myself. And from that first time I was a puking mess. I was hovered above a toilet for 5 hours. I got in trouble from the rip, and I knew in my heart that I needed more of that. Whatever any substance put within me, that's the moment I fell in love, right? I didn't need anything else in my life, and I realized it right from that point. And like I said, I think I've been an alcoholic long before I picked up a drug, and I think that's the moment I literally did. But, we all start slow. So, I had a bad misadventure with 2 loving parents. I didn't really get in trouble, and life continued on, but I'd continually get more and more in trouble with my family, just because I could not put this thing down, and I really didn't know what it did for me. I became just much more chronic with it. Drinking a lot. I would raid my stepdad's liquor cabinet, and this man loved me so much that he poured probably his couple $100 collection of bottles right down the sink because he saw where I was going. And that's the mark of someone who's not an alcoholic, because I still can't comprehend doing that. That's a couple $100, yeah, right? I mean, I don't care how much I love you, I ain't dumping it down the drain, right? So, life continued on. For a long time, the consequences just felt family-oriented. I couldn't see myself actually going down the drain because it felt like it was my mom and stepdad putting down the hammer. It didn't feel like real consequences, because your parents' punishments aren't real consequences. When you're out in the real world, your parents aren't there to punish you, right? So as I kept going on, life would get worse, but I just said, well, when I'm free, things are going to get better, and when I turned 16, freshman year, 15, whatever, they were sort of a scratch. It doesn't matter too much. But 16, I ended up applying to go into trade school for cosmetology. I'm a fully trained hairdresser and everything, and I got in, and it sort of built my self-esteem a little bit, but it basically gave me this out. It was another world of secrecy where, now instead of being one of my peers within my own school, I was one of like 20 people, in my class doing this trade. And it also gave me an avenue to be incredibly more intoxicated, because a lot less eyes were on me. And bless her heart, my cosmetology teacher was like straight out the 50s, like sweet housewife lady, innocent as could be, cherry pie. And she didn't really know what my lifestyle looked like on the face, right? So my disease just got sicker and sicker, and I was allowed to progress. 16 doesn't have all too much with it, but when I was 17, this is when I found out the easily available things right in any grocery store, right? So much of my addiction at this age was just, what am I legally allowed to purchase? I'm 17, and I know it might sound It's mentioned in the AA book, so I'm going to mention it here. In the acceptance was the answer. There's a doctor there, and he talks about taking a high-powered Benzedrine, right? That's an amphetamine. That's the drug I ended up falling in love with. It was very easily accessible, and I would mix it with alcohol. I would mix it with anything I could on top, and it was just this cocktail to get me through my days. And very quickly I had progressed from the more innocent days of my substance consumption, of, you know, listening to horrible music and smoking some pot, so now I'm doing much more severe things and trying to escape from a problem I still don't understand that I have, right? My senior year was 2019 to 2020, and my beast had just been allowed to progress and progress and progress and progress. And then all of a sudden, come March 2020, I'm in my senior year of high school, about to graduate trade school. The only thing holding me down is school, and the whole world shuts down. I'm not even an adult yet. I'm in high school, and the pandemic hits, and almost every friend I had in high school, I haven't seen them since that point. I've never gotten the license from the trade school. I don't want to feel like resentful at the hands of fate, you know, but sometimes I do, just because I feel like I was building this start to my life that I've never been able to embrace. And it gave me definitely this sense of just like self-pity, you know. I'm allowed to do this now. It made me gravitate, you know, I was an addict and alcoholic without realizing it at this point. And I know that every single day I woke up, I sought out a sense of oblivion. The morning before I could indulge in anything like that hour window was pure hell. And my goal for every single day was to get as intoxicated as possible before I fell asleep. Whether I passed out or planned to fall asleep, it didn't matter at that point. You know, I graduated high school on a Zoom meeting. I felt extremely disconnected, and right up around the time I turned 18, I just let loose, and my family had discovered me moving a giant jug of, I think, Svedka into my house that I had bought off a friend, and it's not necessarily easy to hide. And basically I had that whole I'm a man now thing, and I said, well, I will be leaving your house. So me and my giant bottle of vodka, I marched right out the door ready to conquer the world. And I moved in with a person who dealt me narcotics. Very smart idea for someone in the start of their life in a vulnerable position. I'll just say a lot of bad ensued. I did so much damage to my brain during this period that I don't remember the whole month, right? But all I know is I moved in with this person, and one night I lost all conception of reality. I think I was trying to get back into my house, but I went to the house next door instead because I didn't know where I was or what was going on. It's very obvious I was intoxicated, and I entered a person's house and assaulted them. I think my thought process was, what are you doing in my house? And I was actually in their house. You know, that's where addiction took me. I'm not the crafty, cool guy using. I'm the idiot, you know, the town drunk. Like, that's who I am. And all I know is from that point on, I woke up in my first treatment center. Oh, what's going on? You know, and from that moment on, I'm not an alcoholic. What the hell is going on? This is not the place for me. How am I in time? You know, I couldn't conceive of it, and I'll try to expedite this a little bit. From that point on, which was about the summer of 2020 to December 1st of 2020, I just fought this the whole time. It was a series of progressive relapses. I could not accept to myself that I was an alcoholic, that I was an addict, that I could not use in any way, shape, or form and it be successful to me. But I found myself at the end of November of 2020, you know, I had a 3.5 GPA in high school. I graduated trade school. I was not an unpopular kid. This and that and the third, and I found myself living on a street corner in Maryland in the wintertime, wondering how the hell did I get here, right? I had been kicked out of a sober living house, and I had no clue what I was going to do. And that's the moment where I count that. I've had a lot of first step experiences, but that's the moment I really mark where I just fully accepted I can't do this by myself anymore, and I don't know what I'm doing to my life. So December 1st, 2020, it's not my sobriety date, but it is my first real sobriety date I've ever had. During that time, I went through my 12 steps, but I did make some big mistakes. Growing up around a bunch of Bible thumpers and me being who I am, I was really scared of the Jesus, God concept. I couldn't accept it into my heart. So basically, I sort of just lied to my first sponsor. I'm like, yeah, I'm good on the higher power thing. Totally cool, rock solid. And I didn't talk to God at all. You know, I hardly believed in anything. I was like, the stars are my higher power, man. I made it 6 months. I said I worked all 12 steps. Basically, I skipped 2 and 3 and then just wrote a bunch, and I didn't actually put the effort into my spirituality. I couldn't accept it was a spiritual program. I just left high school, so I counted it as like, well, I wrote it down, so I did my homework. Like, I'm going to be sober forever now. And I went back out, a bunch more bang in my head, and I got the bright idea that I was going to move to Portland, Oregon, because the location change does so many people amazing things. Right? Now, I didn't know this before I moved to Portland, Oregon. I moved there on this spur of a whim. Portland, Oregon, in this entire country, probably has the worst narcotic crisis of the entire country. I didn't even know that getting on the flight. It wasn't planned. It wasn't anything. And my sweet, 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 loving parents who would do anything for me basically sent their son out there to die without even knowing it. There were moments, brief-lived, of sobriety, but basically my 2 years out in Portland were a continual first step experience of just realizing how much lower this could go. I saw so many people just collapse in front of me on sidewalks, die of opiate overdoses. I spent so many nights alone on the street in psychosis, freezing, because in Portland, 6 months out of the year it's raining, and it's all in the wintertime. And I would just spend the whole night shivering, waiting for the moment for the pharmacies to go back in there so I could go steal some hand sanitizer to drink, because I was that type of alcoholic too. And the most torturous thing about it was I knew there was a better way, but it seemed like I just could not accept it into my heart to get clean and sober. I felt like this outlier even when it came to AA. I felt like I couldn't let people in. And I knew I was the problem, but I had no idea how to address it. And I got to the point where I was heavily considering suicide. And this might seem absolutely delusional in my thought process, but I think God completely saved my life from my suicide attempt, where I don't have a seizure disorder, and actually at the time of this happening, I was stone cold sober, not even detoxing. Out of the blue, early part of 2023, I had a grand mal seizure out of nowhere, accompanied with a brain aneurysm. I was 20 years old. It makes no sense, right? I believe God saved my life with that seizure. I believe God placed it in my head because I was about to take my own life, and it made me realize the preciousness of what I hold and how fragile it is. And it showed me that the gutter I'd been living in was not all that was waiting for me. I had a second seizure right after that. It was much more minor. I was out within the night. I continued to progress because I guess I didn't take a chance or take a hold of that gift that God gave me, and I ended up actually having a third one, another grand mal seizure and another brain aneurysm. And anyone that knows me in this room knows I have an awful memory. That's the reason I have an awful memory. I have excessive amounts of brain trauma. And, when I got pulled out of the induced coma from my third seizure, my stepdad was waiting in the room, and he flew me back to the East Coast. And my life had just unraveled to a point I couldn't even comprehend. And I had built myself up into such an untrustworthy person that my family still doesn't believe that I was sober for my seizures. And I know that I was, and they still don't believe me, and it breaks my heart, but that's what I've done to myself. But even from that point of moving back to the East Coast, which was like the summer of 2023, I've still failed many times. But if there's one thing I respect about myself, I haven't given up. I've probably attended treatment more times than anyone I know. And right now I sit here with, almost 90 days. And if there's one thing I seek out of this life, it's just peace. It's that serenity that I crave. I don't care. I used to be high thrills, high stakes. I didn't even mind living on the street because it felt like I was striking out against the world and just doing something original. And it's like, I don't want to even be original anymore. I just want to be at peace. I can't take the way I've lived. I'm glad I'm getting the message sort of at 22. Every single thing that I've put in the way of my disease to try to control it has just ended, it's invariably ended with less control. It's like that thing they say in the big book, and I can look back at all the mistakes I've made. I can look at the fact I'm still homeless right now. If I was kicked out of the PHP I'm in, I would be sleeping on a sidewalk. My memory's still shot. I could have a seizure at any moment. All these things. I think of acceptance as the answer. Like I mentioned, there's nothing I can do in my life right now if I don't start with a decent degree of acceptance. And I just want to grow from this point. The life I have lived has torn me down, and I couldn't recognize how many blessings and roadblocks were placed in my way to stop me from doing what I wanted. And what I wanted has only gotten me into worse positions. So I'm finally trying to take a piece of advice and just do what other people tell me to do, because obviously I don't know the way to live. At this point, I'm sort of getting to rambling. I think I'm going to wrap it, but hopefully that was something decent. I've never spoken at a meeting before, so I appreciate you guys listening. Thank you so much.
Okay, please limit your sharing to 3 minutes. Please keep your shares related to the step. If you feel like drinking, or if you had a drink today, please see me or speak to someone after the meeting. We can ask that you please refrain from the use of profanity. We are in a church and on a spiritual journey. Now I would like to open the meeting.